The visual I want you to picture is this little girl screaming into the wind. Guess what? Nobody can hear her. Nobody cares. It's a crazy, chaotic, loud, busy world that we live in. People are not going to care about what you're saying, what you're doing, unless you're the best. And what do I mean by that? You need to be that best solution that we just talked about to a real problem, not the seventh best solution, not the 364th best podcast that interviews entrepreneurs, the best. People will beat a path to your doorstep when you're number one in one thing. That's how you win.
In your experience of all these years, what do you feel? I know a lot of people reach out to you, ask questions, want to start a podcast, want to write a book, want to make millions. What have you seen the biggest problem that entrepreneurs have from your experience and your perspective?
It's very clear, brother. Everybody who I see has a problem is trying to be a pale, weak imitation of somebody else. They're like, oh, look what Peter's doing. Let me do that. Look what John's doing. Let me do that. Let me fill in the blank, do what they're doing. My friends, if you are a pale, weak imitation of somebody else, you're never going to have the type of success that you want to have. Everybody that I've interviewed, now over 3,000 successful entrepreneurs, they've done one thing. They've identified their zone of fire. They've identified their big idea, and they've become the best at that thing. And they're winning as a result. So until you can look in the mirror, look in your two eyes, and literally say to yourself, I am the best solution to this specific problem, you are not going to win at the level you want to.
And do you see a lot of people that try to be everything for everybody, or they have like 19 businesses and they're trying to be too much for people? Have you seen that ruin growth, success, and money?
It ruins everything. Listen, the visual I want you to picture is this little girl screaming into the wind. Guess what? Nobody can hear her. Nobody cares. It's a crazy, chaotic, loud, busy world that we live in. People are not going to care about what you're saying, what you're doing, unless you're the best. And what do I mean by that? You need to be that best solution that we just talked about to a real problem, not the seventh best solution, not the 364th best podcast that interviews entrepreneurs, the best. People will beat a path to your doorstep when you're number one in one thing. That's how you win.
I remember we talked a couple years back and you said, we first connected and you were wanting to speak more. We then connected, you're like, there's too many people wanting me to speak. I have to raise my price. And you were turning down speeches. So yeah. Is that a clear way to be a master at your craft? Is that a clear way to kind of get whatever you want, whether it's speaking, higher fees, coaching clients, success, lifestyle? Is that the focus?
Listen, there's a season for everything you're going to do in life. And my first season of life, I said yes to everything because everything was a great opportunity because I had so few opportunities. I loved saying yes, and I did all the time, and I busted my butt. I worked my little booty off, and I said yes, yes, yes. I took every opportunity I could. I moved into the second season of my life. Okay, I'm going to learn how to say no to a couple things because I only have so much time, so much energy, so much effort. And now I'm into the 5th, 6th, 7th season of my life right now. And I'm literally a no to everything unless it's a hell yes. I mean, obviously getting on this call with you is a hell yes. So I'm a yes to that, but I'm a no to almost everything because I'm at that season. And that's where people will get to. But you have to understand there are seasons in your life, in your business, in your career, in your health, and you've got to live in that moment.
And do you take a step back sometimes to kind of see how far you've gone being in Puerto Rico half the year? Or are you go, 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 go? Because I see you go, go, go and working, but I also see you relaxing now. At the beginning, you were more like you said, saying yes. So is this one of your favorite seasons where you have leverage to do what you want on your terms?
This is a great season because listen, brother, I've achieved what I call freedom. Freedom to do what I want, where I want to do it, with whom I want to do it with. Like when you achieve those things, it's amazing. And guess what? It did not come overnight. Like you said, it took me time, energy, and effort to build to this place where I'm at now. But because now I'm willing to really be specific about what it is that I want to bring to this world, and I know what that is, I focus on that. I'm laser focused. And the last image I want to give people on this topic really is Listen, so many people right now are trying to resonate with everybody, like Peter shared. And as a result, they're resonating with nobody. They're going 1 mile wide and just 1 inch deep in all these little areas. And they're wondering why they're not making any impact or any impression. You need to find that 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep that you're willing to go to be the best in that little micro niche, just to start, just to get that initial momentum. Like Peter, back in 2012, I wanted to podcast. I would have failed with that broad idea. What about a business podcast? That's a niche down. Okay, there's a lot of them. What about an interview business podcast of entrepreneurs? Okay, now I'm really getting niched. Yep. There's 7 other of them. Do I want to be the 8th best podcast interviewing entrepreneurs? No, I want to be the best. So I niched down a 4th time to where it hurts, where I said, I'm going to launch a daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. I'm going to 10x the quantity of everybody else in my industry right now. They're doing 4 a month. I'm doing 30. I'm going to beat them with quantity because I can't beat them with quality because I wasn't that good, but I beat them with quantity. I was the only game in town. The day I launched this show, it was the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. It was the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. It was the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. How can you be the only?
How do you kind of figure out the how? When you commit, you're like, I'm going to do a podcast every day. You probably didn't know exactly how or what to do. Did you commit first and figure it out? Is that kind of the path?
Listen, I knew that I had to commit first because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the tech side of things. I didn't know how to interview somebody. I didn't know if anybody was going to say yes, but I committed to the goal. I committed to the dream. And then I started to invest in myself. I hired the right mentor who was a successful business podcast host. I joined the right mastermind that was full of other podcasters who were at different stages of their journey. I made the right steps early on. And I want to be very clear about something. I knew that if I was going to win, I had to set a high barrier because a high barrier means you have low competition. In fact, the higher the barrier, the lower your competition. And guess what? With a 7-day-a-week podcast, I set such a high barrier, Peter, I didn't have any competition. There was literally no competition. I was the only game in town. And that's why I won. That's why I got the first mover advantage on the daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. And I kept it because my barrier was so high. What I see these days and where people struggle is they do have a really good idea, by the way, but it's such a low barrier that it's easy for your competition to jump over. And so guess what they do? You have a good idea, you have some success, people are drawn towards success like moths to a flame, and they say, well, I want to do that too. So then everybody pours in and it's easy to replicate because it's a low barrier and everybody replicates it. It's a saturated market and everybody, I mean, everybody loses, even you, the first mover. You have to build a moat around your business. And that all comes back to being the best solution at one real problem.
So what does uncommon success mean to you, and how can someone find kind of their own version of it?
And I love how you phrase that, your own version of that, because guess what? There's a friend of mine who lives in Bozeman, Montana right now. He makes $47,000 a year, and he wakes up every single day. He does what he loves to do, creating the content he loves to create, goes fishing, goes hunting, lives well below his means, and is a baller and is loving life. That's uncommon success. There's so many different versions of uncommon success. It is your version. And so first off, I teach you how to create your version of uncommon success for maybe the first time in your life, really understanding what it is that you want. Like to say, I want to be a multimillionaire, that's okay. And you can do that, but that's not the end game. Like there's a life around that. That's why the tagline is a 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment. There's a lot of really rich people out there, Peter, not fulfilled. And I don't want that life. I want the financial freedom and I have it. I also want the fulfillment. I want both, and you can have both. And you need to understand what both would look like in your world. Maybe it is making a couple $1 million a year like myself and Peter do. Maybe it is, making $47,000 a year, living in Bozeman, Montana, living well below your means. Maybe it's that too. Like it can be your version of uncommon success. And that's what this book gives to you. And that's what I'm passionate about.
What's one thing every entrepreneur must do if they want to find that freedom and fulfillment in their lives? If it's not just about the money, which you've helped me make a lot of money. You've helped people make money. That is a prerequisite for some people. And I know you Gamechangers value and respect financial freedom. But what's one thing they can do to help make sure they solidify freedom, lifestyle, and success?
Most people are going to die, Peter. They're going to die without ever identifying their big idea. They're not even going to know what their big idea is. And then they're going to die, like literally. There are people that are going to die today, right now. As you and I are talking, there are people dying. And these people are dying just of old age, of whatever it is, never having experienced their zone of fire, never living within that. There's a fantastic book called The 5 Biggest Regrets of the Dying, written by a nurse who was in hospice nurse for 20 years, interviewing people in the last couple of days of their life about their biggest regrets. One of those 5 was that I wish I didn't live a life based on other people's opinions and expectations. Well, guess what? That's how most people are living their lives. And that is so devastatingly sad. If you even could just sit down and for the first time in your life, identify your big idea, not Peter's big idea, not JLD's big idea, not Gary Vaynerchuk's big idea. If you could identify your big idea and start living in your zone of fire, everything changes. And literally step 1, chapter 1, I teach you how to identify your big idea. And there may be people right now watching and reading and will read this book who are pretty sure they have their big idea. And guess what? I hope you do. And this is good because this is 3 things are going to happen. At every step, 3 things are going to happen in this 17 steps. Number 1, you're going to validate that, yes, in fact, you did crush this step and you are living in your big idea for step 1. Awesome. Or there's a second option. You're like, whoa, I was close. I was on the right track, but there were some tweaks and adjustments I had to make to really nail and solidify my big idea. And frankly, that's going to be most people who aren't quite achieving the level of success they know they can. But then there's step 3, where it's going to be like, I need to just wipe the chalkboard clean here and completely start over because, man, I had this really wrong. And that's good too, because we give you every step, every process on how to do it along the way. Get your 17 steps down, make it happen.
Hey, what's up? And thank you for watching this video. If you enjoy this video and this content, make sure you hit the subscribe button below, put the notifications on, and I assure you, you'll love this content in these videos.